Hello again, and welcome to the Halloween edition of Follow Jordan. I know it's the day after Halloween. I originally recorded this yesterday, but ran into some complicated technical difficulties that you just wouldn't understand. I forgot to turn on the microphone. And let me apologize for not wearing a costume. It's just that I'm a grown adult. I don't have time to dress up like a little kid. I'm above that. ¿A qué hora hay que dejar la habitación?
Self-proclaimed travel Spanish expert.
Oh, they just pick up everything so fast.
Oh, I'm 22. I'm too old to learn a language.
But if I could be serious for a moment, I'm 34 years old and living in the United States. That means most of my friends are married with children, and right now they and their children are plastered all over my Facebook newsfeed in their Halloween costumes. At school, at work. It got me thinking, I wonder what Halloween's like in the rest of the world. So I fired off some messages to friends in Spain, Argentina, Holland, Poland, and Israel. And in today's episode of Follow Jordan, you're gonna find out what they told me.
Pack my things up, carefree, adventurous way, and I'm heading out to see the rest of the world. Yeah, yeah.
First of all, the normal warning. Like I said, I'm 34, single, and live in the suburbs with no children. I have friends that have children. I have a niece and nephew who are children. I was once a child. So these are just my views. In the United States, it seems to me that every child dresses up to go trick-or-treating at night. This is when kids go from house to house in their neighborhood and yell, "Trick or treat!" The homeowner is then judged by both the kids and the parents based on the treat they gave out. I am no exception. Whoever gave me that apple in 1984, I'm gonna... I don't exactly have my finger on the pulse of the streets anymore, but these treats can be anything from a snack-sized candy bar to the full thing. Yes, some apples and carrots are given out too. This year on Facebook, I've seen some crazy things like this lady who plans to give a letter to any child she thinks is too fat for candy. Your child is, in my opinion, moderately obese and should not be consuming sugar and treats to the extent of some children this Halloween season. Only in America. The adults where I live who celebrate come in 3 categories. Number 1, both moms and dads all over the country join in on the fun to make Halloween memorable for their kids. Number 2, those who do it for their work. There seems to be more women than men that fall into this category, but I haven't done a scientific study on this in many years. Then finally, there's the young adults who go out to bars, clubs, or parties. Men are usually dressed up as a police officer, superhero, caveman, or more commonly, not dressed up at all, and women essentially use it as a free pass to dress as slutty as they possibly can. Okay, so before we get to the responses from around the world, what I've gathered through my travels over the last 12 years, Halloween is way bigger in the United States than anywhere else. But every year, the world gets more Americanized, and each country celebrates it more and more. Yes, even France. Okay, let's start in Spain with my frequent travel partner, Manuel. Manuel's from a region in Spain called Galicia in the northwest. This region has a lot of historical and cultural bonds with their geographic Celtic neighbors in Ireland and Scotland, where it is said the tradition of Halloween has its roots. That's why we're starting with Manuel, and he just knows stuff. I asked everybody the same 3 questions. What % of kids celebrate Halloween? What do they do to celebrate? What % of adults celebrate Halloween? What do they do to celebrate? And have things changed over the years? Any trends? Do more people celebrate than before or less? And here's what Manuel had to say. This year, almost 100% of the kids at school get dressed like zombies. Adults, almost no one. Just if you have kids at school. But then he added, people from 15 to 30, at least 50% or more, go tonight to a Halloween party. There are many events tonight, and in some of them, it's compulsory to go disguised. After that, regarding the trends, he reiterated what I already thought, that every year, Halloween is celebrated even more. But then he told me something interesting. Halloween, the word, comes from Samhain, a Celtic word meaning the night of the dead. Well, travel rule number 137 says never trust Manuel, so I decided to check him out. I perused Wikipedia for a second before I found this little bit. According to many scholars, All Hallows Eve, Halloween, is a Christianized feast initially influenced by Celtic harvest festivals with possible pagan roots, particularly the Gaelic Samhain. Samhain is the same as Samhain that Manuel was saying. Maybe he was right. That makes sense. Travel rule number 642 is never trust Jordan. I guess in Galicia, or at least in La Coruña, his city, Samhain is what Halloween's always been called, and it's been celebrated every year. But he was quick to point out that it was never about skeletons and monsters, it was about going to the graveyard and saying hello to your dead relatives. Lately, it's more Yankee, partying the night before, dressed as a zombie. Then he called me some expletives that I can't repeat here. Yankee is a humorous word they often use in Spain for Americans, even in the newspapers if I recall. Funny story, when I was studying in Holland, I could never tell if the Spanish people were saying Yankee, like an American American, or Yankee, which is their way of saying junkie, which there were a lot of in Amsterdam at the time. The next reply that really got my attention was from my friend in Buenos Aires, Argentina. What got my attention about Gonzalo's response was he went into social classes right off the bat. You might think there's a wide divide between rich and poor in your country, but that gulf is rarely more apparent than in Buenos Aires. In fact, just last week, The Economist had an interesting article about Argentina's huge wealth gap. I'll leave the link in the description. Gon started, it's all about social class. Kids living in country clubs and attending fancy private schools, I would say about 90% of them celebrate. Poor kids living in slums, I don't really think so. Porteños, a word used to describe the citizens of Buenos Aires, are party addicts, so whatever celebration comes in handy, it's always highly appreciated. Gonzalo brings up an interesting point. Everything you hear about a country is always just one perspective. In Buenos Aires, everybody dresses up for Halloween, but in Buenos Aires, nobody dresses up. Both those statements are true depending on where in Buenos Aires you live. My friend Greg from Poland said, it's not really celebrated much there, but then added something interesting. Something is changing. You can see some people dressing up, and the church in Poland is saying that it's a celebration of the devil. If you didn't know, Poland is one of the fastest growing and quickest modernizers of the last 20 years. So I'm guessing, just like in Spain that saw rapid growth in a short amount of time after the fall of Franco, there's a much bigger than normal difference between the old and new generations. But Greg is now living in Denmark and said, Copenhagen is full of dressed up people. Halloween is a time for dressing up to party, and Danes like that. My friend Joachim from Sweden, one of my best travel meets ever, told me for the older generation, especially Christian folks, it's to remember loved ones who have passed away. Maybe they go to church, light candles, and tend to the family grave at the cemetery. He continues, over the past 20 years, the holiday has become more commercialized and has more or less lost its religious connotations. It's Americanized to an extent that older people from time to time complain that old tradition is more or less extinct. Let's head to the UK now, where my friend Parm tells us more of the same. Halloween has been a growing trend here in the UK since I was a kid, but it's his next two statements that grab my attention. Approximately 10% of kids actually get dressed up and go trick-or-treating. But then he continued, around 30% of adults celebrate it, usually by way of Halloween parties. So basically in the UK, more adults celebrate Halloween than kids. Hooligans. But Parm wasn't done with the interesting observations. He continued and confirmed my judgments. It's a growing celebration that big corporations are pushing harder each year to promote. Drinking and going out culture is huge in the UK, and this is where there's a growing theme night and house parties trend. Trick-or-treating is still generally a small thing, which most communities do not like, so they post signs saying, not welcome. Last but not least, we're going to my friend Shai in Israel. It seems in a way it's kind of the same in Israel. In the past, we never celebrated it. It's a trend that I think is growing in the last 5 years or so. Some young adults celebrate in the main cities, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, going to clubs and pubs. But Shai's first statement is what I focused on. Kids do not celebrate it at all. So I wrote him back, making sure I understood. Even though the general trend is to celebrate more among the adults, the kids still don't celebrate at all? I asked. No, the schools really follow the Jewish traditions here, avoiding anything else. So there you have it. It seems that Halloween is celebrated in one form or another, in most westernized countries at least. But to what extent and how long it's been going on varies. My friend Gonzalo in Argentina reminded us that it really depends on what social class you're in. That stuff is more freely talked about in Latin America, but I'm guessing it's just as true here in the United States. To me, growing up in a middle-class family, all the kids dress up, but the reality is that's probably not true. Another huge variable seems to be how tied the modern society is to the older cultures and practices. In Sweden and Spain, there seems to be a stronger tie to the older meaning of remembering the dead. And I know in Spain, I don't know Sweden nearly as well, but most people I meet in Spain seem to know little stories about everything, about the dish we're eating or the significance of a festival, which there's a lot of in Spain. If there's two things I want you to take away from this video, it's this. Number one, get out there and see the world before it's one big Starbucks. Anytime I visit a place for the second time, I'm saddened by how much it's been Americanized. Nothing wrong with the United States when you're in the United States, but number two, everything we see, think, read, hear is just one perspective. When you learn of a new perspective, don't just throw the old one out. I laugh at the people who laugh at the people who used to say the world is flat.
Seems pretty flat to me.
I'm Jordan and I love traveling. Until the next time, happy day after Halloween. Ho, ho, ho.